Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling Chinese civilization.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? And we're going way back to the very beginning, to its origins.
A very beginning.
It's going to be like piecing together a giant historical puzzle.
I like puzzles.
Just skimming through the sources. I'm already hooked by these little snippets.
What kind of snippets?
About eunuchs wielding power.
Really?
Secret police keeping tabs on everyone.
I mean, that's kind of scary.
And even a rebellion sparked by a salt smuggler. It's all in here. Okay, let's travel back in time. Way back. What makes China's beginning so special?
Well, one key difference lies in its agriculture. You see, unlike other civilizations that incorporated livestock into their farming practices, ancient China focused primarily on cultivating plains and valleys.
Interesting.
With limited livestock raising.
So it's like they had a different relationship with the land and its resources. Why do you think that was?
Geography likely played a crucial role.
Okay.
Picture, if you will, the fertile plains of the Yellow River Basin.
Okay.
Ideal for cultivation, but surrounded by vast steppes more suitable for nomadic herding.
Okay, yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and this natural separation may have encouraged the development of a distinct agricultural system in China.
It's like two different worlds coexisting, but developing along separate paths.
Precisely.
So while other civilizations were incorporating animals for plowing and fertilization,
That's right.
ancient China developed sophisticated irrigation and fertilization techniques to maximize crop yields. So they innovated to overcome the limitations of their environment.
Exactly. They had to.
Now, our sources also mention the development of writing during this period.
Yes.
How did that impact Chinese culture? I mean, I know writing is a big deal, but
Oh, it was huge. Absolutely transformative. Think about it. A sophisticated writing system and a highly developed agricultural system emerged together. Right. They both contribute to a stable and organized society.
That's true, yeah.
Now, the Chinese script, with its unique logographic characters, allowed for a level of continuity in written tradition that's really unmatched in other civilizations.
That's true. I mean, it's incredible to think that someone today could pick up a text from the 2nd century BC.
I know.
And with some effort, understand it.
It's amazing.
I mean, that level of continuity must have had a huge impact on their sense of history and cultural identity.
Absolutely. It fostered a deep reverence for the past, a strong sense of cultural unity across vast distances, and a belief in the power of written knowledge to transmit wisdom across generations.
Yeah.
This reverence for tradition is something that continues to characterize Chinese culture even today.
Okay, so we've got agriculture and writing as foundational pillars. What else characterized this early period?
Well, the source mentions a transition from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age. There's evidence of a possible Xia Dynasty.
Okay.
A period shrouded in mystery.
Mystery.
But crucial in laying the groundwork for bronze technology and, intriguingly, divination practices.
Divination practices. That sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel.
Maybe it is.
Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine this. The ruling elite using animal bones or tortoise shells to communicate with the spirits and seek guidance on important matters.
Okay.
They would apply heat to these objects, causing cracks, and then interpret those cracks as messages from the spiritual realm.
It's mind-blowing. It's like they were trying to decode a secret language written in the patterns of cracked bone.
Exactly. And it reveals a profound belief in a spiritual realm and a desire to understand and influence the world around them through ritual and divination.
It's like peering through a window into their very souls.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And as we move into the next period, the archaic monarchy and the rise of the centralized state, we'll see how these early practices and beliefs continue to shape Chinese civilization.
Okay, let's journey into that next chapter. The archaic monarchy sounds powerful.
It was.
What can you tell us about the Shang Dynasty, which seems to be a major player in this period?
The Shang Dynasty, known for its elaborate royal tombs, offers us a glimpse into a hierarchical society deeply rooted in ritual and ancestor worship.
Yeah.
These tombs, particularly at Anyang, are like time capsules filled with treasures and insights into their social structure, their beliefs, and artistic achievements.
Yeah, I've read about these tombs. Chariot burials, sacrifice servants, and precious artifacts.
Oh, yeah.
It's a stark reminder of the power, and let's be honest, the ruthlessness of the Shang kings.
You're not wrong. But the extravagance, while striking, also reflects their belief in an afterlife and the importance of maintaining social order, even in death. Imagine a society where the king's power extends beyond the grave, where the social hierarchy is mirrored in the afterlife.
It's like they were trying to recreate their world in the afterlife, ensuring their power and status would continue even after death. So how does the story of the Shang Dynasty transition to the Zhou Dynasty?
Well, the shift from the Shang to the Zhou is significant, marking a change in power dynamics and the emergence of a more complex political system.
Okay.
Think of it like this. The absolute power of the Shang kings, symbolized by those extravagant tombs, starts to fracture.
Okay.
The Zhou dynasty sees the rise of principalities, like smaller kingdoms, and a network of alliances and rivalries.
So instead of one dominant power, you have this intricate web of interconnected but often competing entities.
A perfect analogy. You see, the Zhou dynasty established a feudal system where regional lords, owing allegiance to the Zhou king, governed their own territories. This system, while initially stable, eventually led to the Warring States period.
Oh, the Warring States period.
A time of intense conflict and upheaval.
The name itself sounds chaotic. What were the main factors that contributed to this era of conflict?
Imagine a technological revolution sweeping across ancient China, and you have the Warring States period in a nutshell.
Okay.
The key driver, iron. The adoption of iron technology led to the development of more powerful weapons, transforming warfare.
It's like ancient China's version of an arms race, with each kingdom vying for an edge.
Exactly. The old ways of warfare, reliant on chariot-based armies, became obsolete. The rise of iron also had profound social and economic implications. More efficient agriculture led to population growth and expansion, intensifying competition for resources.
So we've got technological advancement, shifting power dynamics, increasing competition for resources, and ambitious rulers eager to expand their territory. It's a recipe for conflict, for sure. How did this chaotic period finally come to an end?
The answer lies in the Qin Dynasty, a kingdom that emerged victorious from the chaos and unified China under a centralized state. Think of it as a phoenix rising from the ashes of the Warring States period.
Okay.
This unification was driven by ambitious rulers and, importantly, by the influence of a new and rather radical school of thought, legalism.
Legalism. The name itself sounds a bit intimidating.
Could be.
What was their philosophy all about?
Well, legalism, unlike Confucianism, which emphasized morality and ritual, advocated for a strong, centralized state ruled by a powerful leader who enforced a strict legal code.
Okay.
Imagine a society where efficiency and order are paramount, where the law reigns supreme, and ethical considerations take a backseat to practical governance.
Wow, that's a pretty stark contrast to Confucianism. It's like they were prioritizing a system based on laws and punishments over one based on moral virtue. Did this new way of thinking succeed?
Well, the Qin Dynasty, under the leadership of Qin Shi Huang, embraced legalist principles wholeheartedly. They reorganized society, standardized weights and measures, built infrastructure, and ultimately created a powerful, unified empire.
So from the chaos and bloodshed of the Warring States period emerged a new China.
That's right.
Forged in the fires of conflict and shaped by a new set of ideas. Wow, that's quite a story.
It is. And the Qin Dynasty, though short-lived, laid the foundation for the imperial system that would define China for centuries to come.
Okay, I'm ready for the next chapter.
All right.
Let's move on to the Han Dynasty and see what they brought to the table.
Well, the Han Dynasty is considered a golden age in Chinese history. Imagine an empire stretching across East Asia, experiencing a surge in economic prosperity, and witnessing a blossoming of cultural and intellectual achievements.
Sounds pretty good.
That was the Han Dynasty. Building upon the foundation laid by the Qin, the Han emperors expanded China's influence and established a robust imperial system that would endure for centuries. The Han Dynasty's expansion was driven by a combination of factors: the desire to secure trade routes, establish military dominance, and spread Chinese culture.
They extended their reach in various directions, including Central Asia and South, beyond the Yangtze River.
Okay, so their motivations and the consequences of their expansion must have differed depending on the region.
Right. I mean, it's not like they applied a one-size-fits-all approach.
Absolutely. Picture this. In Central Asia, their primary goal was securing the Silk Road.
Ah, the Silk Road.
A vital trade route linking China to the West. This brought them into contact with nomadic tribes like the Xiongnu, leading to conflicts and cultural exchanges. It was a clash of civilizations. The settled agricultural society of China encountering the nomadic horse-riding cultures of the steppes.
It's like two completely different worlds colliding.
It was.
Each with its own customs, values, and ways of life. What about their expansion south of the Yangtze River?
Well, in the south, their expansion was driven by the desire to access new resources and agricultural lands, particularly in the fertile Yangtze River basin. Imagine fertile lands ripe for cultivation, beckoning the Han Dynasty to expand its agricultural base.
I can see it.
This expansion led to the integration of diverse cultures and the spread of Chinese agricultural practices southward.
So whether it was securing trade routes, seeking new resources, or spreading their culture, the Han Dynasty's expansion had a profound impact on the regions they integrated into their empire.
Precisely. And speaking of impact, the Han Dynasty also experienced an unprecedented economic upsurge during this period.
It sounds like the Han Dynasty was a major player in global trade even back then.
They were.
I mean, it's almost hard to imagine.
Well, imagine a world where goods, ideas, and technologies flow between China and the West along a network of routes spanning continents. That was the reality during the Han Dynasty.
Wow.
A period of booming trade and economic prosperity fueled by political stability and technological advancements.
So we're talking about the Silk Road in its heyday, right? Silk, spices, jade, even horses.
Yeah.
Being traded across vast distances, connecting distant cultures, and shaping the global economy.
It's truly remarkable. And this economic prosperity wasn't just about material wealth. It also fostered a vibrant cultural and intellectual life. Think of it as a ripple effect. Economic prosperity creating the conditions for a flourishing of literature, art, and philosophy. And it's this interplay of cultural influences, economic prosperity, and a stable political system that makes the Han Dynasty such a fascinating period in Chinese history.
It really does. This has been an amazing journey so far. We've explored the foundations of ancient China, the rise of the centralized state, and now the golden age of the Han Dynasty.
And there's more.
What comes next in our exploration of Chinese history?
Now, we enter a period that in some ways mirrors the European Middle Ages.
Oh.
It's a time of decline, fragmentation, and the rise of new cultural and religious influences. Like all empires, the Han Dynasty eventually faced internal and external pressures that led to its decline.
Okay.
And from this decline, a new era emerges, one shaped by the rise of aristocratic power, the influx of nomadic groups, and the spread of a new religion, Buddhism.
It sounds like a period of profound transformation.
Yeah.
How did the decline of the Han Dynasty actually play out? What were the key factors that contributed to its fall?
Internally, economic troubles, social unrest, and political instability began to weaken the empire. A growing gap between the wealthy elite and the peasantry led to widespread discontent and a loss of faith in the government.
It's like the very foundations of the empire were crumbling.
They were. And externally, nomadic groups along the northern and western borders exerted increasing pressure on the Han Dynasty's frontiers. These groups, often seeking better grazing lands or escaping stronger rivals, tested the empire's defenses and strained its resources.
So it's a combination of internal weaknesses and external pressures that ultimately brought down the Han Dynasty. How did the political landscape of China change after the fall of the Han?
Well, imagine a once unified empire splitting into 3 separate kingdoms, each vying for power. That's what happened in the 3rd century AD. The Han Dynasty fragmented into the 3 kingdoms period, with Wei, Shu, and Wu battling for control of the former Han territories.
It's like a historical Game of Thrones,
It was.
with each kingdom maneuvering for advantage and seeking to claim the mantle of the fallen Han Dynasty. Did this fragmentation have ripple effects beyond just the political realm?
Absolutely. This wasn't just a change in leadership. It led to a weakening of the old order with its centralized bureaucracy and Confucian ideology. The political fragmentation created a vacuum that allowed new social and cultural forces to emerge.
Okay, so what new forces emerged during this period of fragmentation?
One significant development was the rise of aristocratic families, especially in the South. These families, often wealthy landowners, gained power and influence in the absence of a strong central authority.
Okay.
It's like a power shift from a centralized empire to a more decentralized system dominated by local elites.
So while the kingdoms battled for supremacy, these aristocratic families were consolidating their power at the local level.
They were.
What about those external pressures you mentioned? Did the fall of the Han Dynasty open the door for more nomadic groups to enter China?
Exactly. The influx of nomadic groups into northern China continued during this time. Driven by a combination of factors like climate change, pressure from other tribes, or simply the lure of wealth, these groups established their own kingdoms and interacted with the existing Chinese population. Imagine a melting pot of cultures, with nomadic traditions blending with Chinese customs and beliefs.
So you've got internal changes like the rise of these powerful families.
Yeah.
And external pressures with the influx of nomadic groups. It's like China was being reshaped from both within and without.
It was.
What about the cultural and intellectual landscape? How did this period of fragmentation affect Chinese thought and beliefs?
Well, think about it. With the Han Dynasty and its emphasis on Confucianism gone, other schools of thought and belief systems began to flourish. Confucianism remained influential, but it was no longer the dominant force it once was. It's like a garden where new flowers are allowed to bloom alongside the established ones.
So a period of greater intellectual and religious diversity.
One of the most significant developments was the spread of Buddhism from India, a religion emphasizing compassion, spiritual enlightenment, and the pursuit of nirvana, finding fertile ground in a China shaken by uncertainty and upheaval.
That makes a lot of sense. When times are tough, people often turn to new sources of hope and solace.
Precisely. Buddhism, with its message of escaping suffering and achieving inner peace, resonated deeply with many during this turbulent era, and its spread was facilitated by the Silk Road, which, even amidst the political chaos, continued to connect China with the world.
So it's not just goods and merchandise that traveled along the Silk Road, but also ideas, philosophies, and even religions.
Yeah.
It's like a highway for cultural exchange.
Exactly. Buddhist monks and merchants journeyed along the Silk Road, bringing scriptures, art, and stories that captivated the Chinese imagination. But how did Buddhism interact with existing Chinese beliefs and practices like Confucianism and Taoism? Was it a smooth integration, or were there clashes?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to imagine a foreign religion being readily embraced without some resistance.
You're right. Buddhism didn't completely replace existing beliefs. Instead, Buddhism found ways to make itself relevant to the Chinese context.
What were some of the key features of Buddhism's integration into Chinese society?
Imagine sprawling monasteries dotting the Chinese landscape, becoming centers of learning, religious practice, and even economic activity. These monasteries weren't just isolated retreats. They were active participants in the social and cultural life of their communities. And Buddhist art, with its iconic images of the Buddha and Bodhisattvas, became a prominent feature of Chinese visual culture. Think serene Buddha statues, intricate mandalas, and vibrant murals adorning temple walls. These images not only conveyed religious teachings, but also inspired artists and influenced Chinese aesthetics.
So Buddhism left its mark on everything from architecture and art to literature and philosophy.
It did. And this wasn't a one-way street. Buddhism adapted to the Chinese context, incorporating elements of ancestor worship and Confucian values. This process of integration and adaptation would continue for centuries, shaping the religious and cultural landscape of China.
This period of fragmentation is so intriguing.
It is.
We've seen the decline of the Han Dynasty, the rise of aristocratic families, the influx of nomadic groups, and the spread of Buddhism. It's like China was being remade with new forces and ideas vying for influence. What happens next? Do we see a return to unity and centralized power?
We do. From the fragmented landscape of the Three Kingdoms period and the subsequent centuries, we see a return to unification, first under the Zhou Dynasty, and then more significantly under the Tang Dynasty.
The Tang.
These dynasties marked a turning point in Chinese history, restoring centralized rule and ushering in a new era of prosperity and cultural achievement.
Okay, so it sounds like we're about to enter another golden age in Chinese history. But how did they manage to reunite a fragmented empire? What were the key factors that led to the rise of the Zhou and Tang dynasties?
Think of it like a two-act play. The Zhou Dynasty sets the stage, laying the groundwork for reunification, and then the Tang Dynasty takes center stage, consolidating power and establishing a more enduring and glorious empire.
Okay, I like the analogy. Tell me more about this two-act play.
Well, the Zhou Dynasty, under Emperor Wen, took the first steps toward reunification through strategic military campaigns and alliances. They also focused on rebuilding infrastructure like roads and canals to reconnect the fragmented regions of China. It's like they were repairing the torn fabric of the empire.
So they were not just conquering territory, but also laying the foundations for a strong and unified state.
Exactly. And then comes the Tang Dynasty, building upon this foundation, led by ambitious and capable emperors like Emperor Taizong. They implemented reforms to strengthen the central government and expand their territory.
So it seems like effective leadership combined with smart policies played a crucial role in their success.
Absolutely. The Tang Dynasty also benefited from a revitalized economy. fueled by advancements in agriculture, thriving trade along the Silk Road, and innovative financial policies. Think of a society where commerce flourishes, cities grow, and new technologies emerge. That was the Tang Dynasty at its peak.
Yeah, it sounds like an era bursting with energy and progress. What were some of the key characteristics of the Tang Dynasty's reign? What made this period stand out in Chinese history?
Imagine a China radiating its influence across East Asia, a center of cultural brilliance with a cosmopolitan outlook and a powerful military. That was the Tang Dynasty.
It's like they were reasserting China's position as a major force on the world stage.
Precisely. They reestablished the civil service examination system,
Oh, okay.
which had weakened during the period of fragmentation.
Right.
This system, based on meritocratic principles, aimed to select talented officials based on their knowledge and abilities, not just their family connections or wealth.
Okay.
Candidates were rigorously tested on their knowledge of Confucian classics and their ability to compose essays and poems.
It's like a highly competitive, ancient version of a standardized test for aspiring government officials.
It was.
Sounds intense.
It was a rigorous system requiring years of dedicated study and preparation. But success in the examinations brought prestige, social mobility, and the opportunity to serve in influential positions.
So it's not just about landing a government job.
No,
It's about shaping the elite who will govern China. What a powerful tool.
it was. The Tang Dynasty also implemented significant economic reforms.
Okay.
They shifted from a land-based taxation system to a system based on commerce and trade, recognizing the growing importance of trade in their expanding economy. It's like they adapted their policies to reflect the changing economic realities of their time.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right.
If trade is booming and cities are growing, why not tap into that new wealth?
They also invested heavily in infrastructure, particularly canals, to facilitate trade and communication across their vast empire.
Okay.
This brings us back to the Grand Canal, which played a crucial role in connecting the north and south of China.
The Grand Canal, that ancient superhighway. We
Yeah.
touched upon it earlier, but remind me again why it was so significant,
Okay.
especially for the Tang Dynasty.
Well, imagine a waterway linking the Yellow River in the north to the Yangtze River in the south,
Okay.
spanning over 1,100 miles,
Wow.
and facilitating the flow of goods, people, and ideas across vast distances.
It's like the backbone of their empire.
It was. The Grand Canal played a crucial role in transporting grain from the fertile south to the north,
Okay.
ensuring a stable food supply for the capital and northern cities.
Right.
It also facilitated trade, cultural exchange, and even military movements, making it a vital artery for the Tang Dynasty's power and prosperity.
It's such an incredible feat of engineering. I mean, to think that they built something like that so long ago is just mind-blowing.
It is.
Okay, let's shift our focus to another key development mentioned in our sources: rice cultivation.
Well, rice cultivation, already well established in southern China, experienced a boom during the Tang Dynasty thanks to a combination of technological innovations and the favorable climate of the Yangtze River basin. Think of new and improved techniques for planting, irrigating, and harvesting rice, along with the introduction of new high-yielding rice varieties. Increased rice production leads to population growth,
Okay.
particularly in the south, and a shift in the economic center of gravity from the north to the south. The Yangtze River Basin, with its fertile lands and thriving rice paddies, becomes the new heartland of China.
So it's not just about rice.
So, the expansion of rice cultivation played a crucial role in the Tang Dynasty's prosperity and its ability to support a larger and more complex society.
Wow, this is incredible. We've covered the reunification to China,
Yes.
the Tang Dynasty's administrative and economic reforms,
Right.
the significance of the Grand Canal,
Yeah.
and the impact of rice cultivation.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how these pieces fit together to create such a dynamic and influential period in Chinese history. But what about those external challenges you mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
Did the Tang Dynasty, for all its power and prosperity, face threats from beyond its borders?
Well, you're right. Even the most powerful empires are not immune to external threats.
Right.
The Tang Dynasty, despite its strength, had to contend with challenges from nomadic groups to the north and west,
Okay.
as well as from kingdoms in Southeast Asia. They engaged in military campaigns, diplomatic negotiations, and even marriage alliances to manage these complex relationships.
Very strategic.
One of their most significant challenges came from the Tibetan Empire.
The Tibetan Empire, I haven't heard much about them.
Well, they were a force to be reckoned with.
Okay.
What was the nature of their conflict with the Tang Dynasty? Well, imagine two powerful empires, the Tang and the Tibetan, their borders meeting high in the Himalayas. That's where the conflict played out. The Tibetan Empire expanded its influence into regions bordering the Tang Dynasty,
Oh, I see.
leading to territorial disputes and a series of conflicts in the 7th and 8th centuries.
Okay, so it was a clash of titans, each seeking to control strategic territories
Yeah.
and assert their dominance in the region. So who came out on top?
The Tang Dynasty, despite some early setbacks, ultimately managed to contain the Tibetan threat. However, these conflicts drained resources and contributed to internal tensions within the Tang Empire.
So even while they enjoyed a golden age of cultural achievement and economic prosperity, they had to constantly deal with these challenges on their frontiers. It's like juggling multiple crises at once, always trying to stay one step ahead.
And as we'll see, these pressures would eventually contribute to the decline of the Tang Dynasty. In the 9th and 10th centuries, a series of internal and external challenges led to their decline, ushering in a new period of fragmentation known as the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period.
5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. That sounds even more fragmented than the 3 kingdoms period.
It was a turbulent era marked by a weakening of central authority, the rise of regional powers, and the emergence of new political and military actors. Imagine a map of China constantly being redrawn, with new kingdoms rising and falling in rapid succession.
It's like a kaleidoscope, with the pieces constantly shifting and creating new patterns. So I guess my question is, what made this period unique?
One key difference is the sheer number of competing entities.
Okay.
As the name suggests, there were 5 dynasties rapidly succeeding each other in the north. While 10 kingdoms emerged in the south, it was a much more fractured landscape than the 3 kingdoms period.
Wow, yeah. It's almost hard to keep track of so many players. What else made this period unique?
Another significant feature was the growing influence of military leaders.
Okay.
These generals, often commanding powerful armies, played a pivotal role in shaping the political landscape. Think of it like a shift in power from scholar officials to military strongmen.
So it's like the military muscle started to outweigh the power of the pen. Did these military leaders just focus on warfare? Or did they also try to legitimize their rule in other ways?
Well, they weren't just about brute force. They sought to legitimize their rule through cultural patronage, sponsoring the arts, and even attempting to revive Confucian traditions. It's like they realized that true power requires not just military might, but also cultural legitimacy.
So even in this chaotic and fragmented period, we see attempts to restore order, rebuild, and create a sense of continuity with the past.
It's a testament to the resilience of Chinese civilization. And as we'll see, this period of fragmentation, while turbulent, ultimately set the stage for the emergence of a new dynasty that would once again unify China and usher in another era of prosperity and cultural achievement.
Okay, I'm ready for the next chapter. What emerges from this chaotic period? What dynasty steps onto the stage next in our exploration of Chinese history?
From the ashes of the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period rises the Song Dynasty,
The Shang Dynasty.
founded in 960 AD.
Okay.
This dynasty marks the beginning of a new era, one characterized by economic prosperity, technological innovation, and a flourishing of arts and culture.
Sounds like we're about to enter another golden age.
We are.
How did the Song Dynasty manage to bring unity back to China and establish such a prosperous and stable society? What were their secrets?
Unlike some previous dynasties that focused on military expansion, the Song Dynasty prioritized internal stability and good governance. Think of it as a strategic shift from outward conquest to inward consolidation. They recognized that the constant warfare of the previous period had hindered China's development, and they sought to create a more peaceful and prosperous society.
It's like they realized that true strength comes from within.
Exactly. They reformed the civil service examination system, making it even more meritocratic, and expanding access to education. This resulted in a highly educated and capable bureaucracy that effectively managed the affairs of state.
So it's like they invested in human capital, recognizing that a well-educated and competent bureaucracy was the key to good governance. What a forward-thinking approach.
They also implemented innovative economic policies that fostered trade, encouraged technological advancements, and stimulated agricultural production. It's like they had a recipe for success, combining smart policies with a supportive environment for economic growth.
So they weren't content with simply maintaining stability.
No, they weren't.
They actively sought to create a thriving and prosperous society. And did they succeed?
Well, the Song Dynasty witnessed a remarkable period of economic growth and cultural achievement. It's like watching a flower bud slowly blossom, revealing its full beauty. Cities grew, trade networks expanded, and technological innovations flourished, transforming Chinese society and leaving a lasting legacy.
Okay, I'm eager to delve into the specifics. What were some of the key features of the Song Dynasty's economic revolution? What made their economy so dynamic and successful?
Imagine bustling cities teeming with merchants, artisans, scholars, and officials, their streets filled with the sounds of commerce and the sights of cultural exchange. That was the Song Dynasty. Cities like
Kaifeng.
the Song capital,
Okay.
and Hangzhou, a major port city, became centers of economic and cultural activity. These cities had bustling markets, specialized workshops, and a diverse population, all contributing to a vibrant urban landscape. This urbanization reflected a shift from a predominantly agricultural economy to one that embraced trade and manufacturing.
Right.
The Song Dynasty invested in infrastructure, building roads, canals, and harbors to facilitate the flow of goods and people.
We've already talked about the Grand Canal, but it sounds like they were developing a whole network of transportation systems to connect their vast empire.
Exactly. These investments not only facilitated trade within China,
Okay.
connecting different regions and allowing for the exchange of goods, but they also promoted external trade.
So they were trading with other countries.
They were. Chinese merchants sailed to Southeast Asia, India, and even as far as the Middle East and Africa, establishing trading posts and bringing back exotic goods and new ideas.
It's like they were building a global trading empire, their ships carrying silks, porcelain, tea, and other sought-after goods to distant lands, returning with spices, perfumes, and tales of faraway places.
It was a time of incredible expansion and connection. It's like something out of an adventure novel. But all this trade must have created a lot of complexity. How did the Song Dynasty manage all of this?
Yeah. How did they keep track of it all?
Well, they rose to the challenge by developing sophisticated financial instruments.
What?
Think paper money, letters of credit, and even early forms of banking, all innovations that facilitated trade and allowed their economy to flourish.
Paper money. That's revolutionary. We take it for granted today, but it must have been a huge leap forward back then. I can't even imagine trying to conduct all that trade using only heavy copper coins.
It was a game changer. Imagine a merchant setting sail for India, no longer burdened by heavy sacks of coins, but carrying lightweight paper notes representing their wealth. These notes, initially backed by the government, streamlined trade and allowed the economy to grow more efficiently.
That's brilliant. And what about those letters of credit? How did they work?
Well, imagine you're a merchant in Hangzhou wanting to buy silk from a producer in Sichuan, hundreds of miles away. Instead of risking transporting large amounts of cash, you could obtain a letter of credit from a reputable institution, guaranteeing payment to the silk producer upon delivery. This made long-distance trade less risky and more efficient.
So it's like an early version of a bank transfer, ensuring secure transactions across vast distances. It's amazing to think that they were developing such sophisticated financial systems so long ago.
It is, isn't it? And, these innovations reveal the growing sophistication of the Song Dynasty's economy and their ability to adapt to the demands of a rapidly expanding commercial world. It's a fascinating period of innovation, driven by necessity and a desire for greater efficiency and security in their financial dealings.
Okay, we've explored the Song Dynasty's focus on civil administration, their incredible economic prosperity, and their innovations in trade and finance. It's like a masterclass on how to build a thriving and sophisticated society. But our sources also hint at some challenges they faced. What were some of the major threats or obstacles they had to overcome?
Even in a golden age, challenges are inevitable. The Song Dynasty wasn't without its share of difficulties. Internally, they had to manage a vast and complex bureaucracy, address social inequalities, and contend with occasional uprisings or rebellions. They also faced financial challenges, particularly as their military expenditures grew in response to external threats. Maintaining a strong military to defend their borders was essential, but it also put a strain on their resources.
Speaking of external threats, who were the main adversaries they had to worry about? Was it those nomadic groups we talked about earlier?
Well, the nomadic groups were a constant concern. You see, the Song Dynasty faced significant threats from the north, particularly from the Khitan Liao Dynasty, and later the Qin Dynasty. These groups, with their powerful cavalry forces, posed a serious military challenge, forcing the Song to divert resources and constantly be on guard.
It's that classic tension we've seen throughout Chinese history, the settled agricultural society of China versus the nomadic warrior cultures of the steppes.
It's a recurring theme, for sure. And these conflicts, while ultimately manageable for the Song dynasty, were costly and draining, both in terms of resources and human life.
So despite their internal stability and economic prosperity, they couldn't escape the geopolitical realities of their time. There's always someone looking to test your strength and exploit any weakness. It's like they were constantly walking a tightrope, trying to maintain a balance between internal development and external defense.
A perfect analogy. And as we'll see, these external pressures, combined with internal challenges, would eventually contribute to the decline of the Song dynasty. But their story doesn't end there. It leads us to the entry of a new force onto the stage of Chinese history, a force that would reshape the destiny of China and much of Eurasia, the Mongols.
The Mongols. Just hearing the name conjures up images of fierce warriors, thundering horses, and vast empires stretching across continents. Their reputation precedes them.
Indeed. The Mongols, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, emerged from the steppes of Central Asia in the 13th century, embarking on a series of conquests that redrew the map of the world.
Their empire was one of the largest in human history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. It's hard to even grasp the scale of their achievements. How did they manage to conquer such vast territories, including China, which had been a center of power and civilization for centuries?
The Mongols were incredibly effective conquerors, blending military prowess with strategic brilliance and a remarkable ability to adapt to different environments and enemies. They were masters of both horseback warfare and siege tactics, able to overcome even the most fortified cities.
It's like they combined the speed and agility of the wolf with the strength and determination of the bear.
An apt comparison. They were also quick to adopt new technologies, like gunpowder, which gave them a decisive edge over their adversaries. And they were masters of psychological warfare, often offering their enemies a chance to surrender peacefully, but those who resisted faced brutal consequences.
So it's that classic combination of the carrot and the stick. Surrender and be spared, or resist and face our wrath.
Precisely. And once they conquered a territory, they were generally pragmatic rulers, allowing local customs and religions to continue as long as they didn't challenge their authority. They understood that governing a vast empire required a degree of flexibility and tolerance.
So it wasn't just about brute force.
No.
It was about consolidating their power and establishing a stable empire that could incorporate diverse cultures and traditions. How did this approach play out in China?
Well, the Mongol conquest of China, completed in 1279 with the fall of the Song Dynasty, marked a turning point in Chinese history. They established the Yuan Dynasty, which ruled China from 1279 to 1368. It was a period of significant political, social, and cultural change as the Mongols, a foreign power, sought to govern a civilization with a long and proud history.
Okay, let's dive into this Yuan dynasty. What were some of the key features of Mongol rule in China? How did they approach the challenge of governing such a vast and complex empire?
Well, Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan and the founder of the Yuan dynasty, recognized the complexities of ruling China. He adopted a pragmatic approach, blending Mongol traditions with Chinese administrative practices.
It's like they were trying to maintain their own cultural identity while also appealing to the Chinese population they now governed.
Exactly. They divided the empire into provinces, much like previous Chinese dynasties had done, established a centralized bureaucracy, and utilized a postal relay system for communication and control. But they also favored Mongols and other Central Asian allies in key positions, promoted trade and cultural exchange with other parts of the Mongol Empire, and even introduced elements of Mongol culture into Chinese society.
So it's a fascinating mix of continuity and change. How did the Chinese people react to this new Mongol rule?
Well, it was a mixed bag. There was resistance, of course, but also a degree of acceptance, particularly among those who benefited from the peace and stability that Mongol rule brought, as well as those who were willing to collaborate. You see, the Yuan dynasty saw a flourishing of trade, facilitated by the Pax Mongolica.
The Pax Mongolica.
A period of relative peace and stability across much of the Mongol Empire.
It sounds almost ironic, given the Mongols' reputation for warfare and conquest.
It is somewhat ironic, but it highlights a crucial aspect of their rule. They were destroyers, yes, but also builders and facilitators of connections. The Silk Road thrived under Mongol rule, connecting China to the west with renewed vigor, and maritime trade also flourished, with Chinese merchants sailing to distant ports and interacting with diverse cultures.
So it's like the Mongols, despite their reputation for brutality, inadvertently opened up China to the world, creating a more interconnected and globalized society.
And this exchange wasn't just about goods and commodities. It also involved the sharing of ideas, technologies, and religious beliefs.
Speaking of religious beliefs, our sources mention the influence of Islam in China during this period. I'm curious to learn more about that.
Well, the Mongols were known for their religious tolerance, allowing various religions to flourish within their empire. Islam, which had been present in China for centuries, mostly in trading communities, expanded its influence during the Yuan Dynasty.
So how did this expansion of Islam manifest itself? Were mosques built, communities established, or new cultural practices adopted?
You're right on all counts. Mosques were built in major cities, Muslim communities grew, and some Chinese converted to Islam. Muslim scholars and merchants held influential positions in the Yuan court and administration, reflecting the Mongols' willingness to incorporate talented individuals from diverse backgrounds.
But was this integration always smooth? Did tensions or conflicts arise between different religious groups?
While the Mongols generally promoted religious tolerance, there were instances of favoritism and occasional tensions. The complexity of managing a multi-religious empire was a constant challenge, and sometimes those challenges led to friction.
So the Yuan dynasty was a fascinating period. Cultural exchange, economic growth, and a new foreign power ruling over China. But like all dynasties, it eventually came to an end. What led to the decline of the Yuan dynasty and the eventual expulsion of the Mongols from China?
Think of it like a ship taking on water from multiple leaks. Internal strife and factionalism within the Mongol ruling elite weakened their unity and their ability to effectively govern.
It's like that old saying, a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Exactly. And as the Yuan dynasty faced financial challenges, they resorted to excessive taxation, currency devaluation, and other measures that alienated the Chinese population and fueled resentment against Mongol rule. It's like they were losing the trust and support of the people they governed.
And that's never a good sign for a ruling dynasty. Did this loss of support lead to rebellions?
It did. Revolts began to erupt across China, challenging Mongol authority and further weakening their grip on power. It's like a fire starting in the underbrush and gradually spreading until it engulfs the whole forest.
So a combination of internal weaknesses like factionalism and economic mismanagement and external pressures, like the growing resistance of the Chinese population, ultimately brought about the downfall of the Yuan dynasty.
Precisely. And from the ashes of the Yuan dynasty, a new native Chinese dynasty emerged, one that sought to restore Chinese rule and reassert China's cultural identity. The Ming Dynasty.
The Ming Dynasty. It sounds like a period of renewal and resurgence. Tell me more about their rise to power and how they reshaped China after nearly a century of Mongol rule.
Imagine a new dawn breaking after a long night. That's what the Ming Dynasty represented for the Chinese people. Founded by Zhou Yuantang in 1368, the Ming Dynasty marked a return to native Chinese rule and a period of rebuilding, expansion, and a renewed flourishing of Chinese culture.
So it's like they were reclaiming their heritage and asserting their rightful place in the world.
Exactly. One of their primary focuses was on reconstructing the infrastructure and economy that had been damaged during the late Yuan period and the subsequent rebellions. Think of it like rebuilding a house after a devastating fire.
Okay, yeah.
They repaired and expanded the Grand Canal, rebuilt cities, encouraged agricultural production, and promoted trade, laying the foundation for a renewed era of prosperity.
So they were not only rebuilding physical structures, but also restoring a sense of order and purpose to Chinese society.
Precisely. They reestablished the civil service examination system, which had been disrupted during the Yuan dynasty, and emphasized Confucian values in education. They sponsored the compilation of encyclopedias and other scholarly works, promoted Confucian rituals and ceremonies, and built grand temples and palaces that projected imperial power and cultural sophistication. It's like they were reclaiming their cultural legacy and declaring to the world, China is back.
It's a powerful statement. And how do they project their power beyond their borders? Did they continue the Mongols' policy of outward expansion?
They took a different approach. While they did undertake military campaigns to secure their borders and expand their influence, they also embarked on a series of ambitious maritime expeditions led by Zheng He, a court eunuch and skilled admiral.
Zheng He, that name rings a bell. Weren't his voyages some of the most impressive in human history, even surpassing those of European explorers?
They were indeed remarkable. Imagine massive fleets of ships, some larger than anything seen in the world at that time. carrying thousands of sailors, diplomats, scholars, and merchants across vast distances. These voyages, which took place between 1405 and 1433, reached destinations as far as Southeast Asia, India, the Arabian Peninsula, and even the east coast of Africa.
Wow, that's incredible. It's hard to imagine such massive fleets sailing across the world centuries before the age of European exploration. What was the purpose of these expeditions? Were they seeking new lands to conquer, like the Mongols?
No, their motives were different. They sought to establish diplomatic ties with foreign rulers, promote trade and cultural exchange, and project Chinese power and prestige. Think of it as a grand diplomatic mission combined with a show of force and a thirst for knowledge.
It's like they were saying, we're here, we're powerful, and we're open to doing business.
Exactly. They carried valuable goods, such as silk and porcelain, to trade with foreign rulers. They returned with exotic animals, plants, and other treasures, adding to the splendor of the Ming court. They established contacts with rulers and merchants across the Indian Ocean, expanding China's sphere of influence through diplomacy and trade.
So it sounds like they were creating a network of relationships and connections across the maritime world, extending China's influence far and wide.
They were, but these expeditions were also controversial.
Oh.
Some officials in the Ming court argued that they were too costly and that China should focus on internal matters rather than these outward ventures. They believed that China was self-sufficient and didn't need to engage with the rest of the world.
It's that classic debate between those who advocate for an outward-looking global perspective and those who favor a more inward-looking approach.
And in the end, those who favored a more inward-looking approach prevailed. After Zheng, his seventh and final voyage in 1433, the Ming Dynasty curtailed its maritime expeditions, focusing its resources on consolidating its power within China.
So it's like a brief but brilliant burst of maritime activity, followed by a return to a more land-based focus. What led to this shift in thinking?
Well, it reflects the complex internal dynamics of the Ming court, the competing visions for China's role in the world, and the challenges of managing such ambitious and costly expeditions.
Okay, we've explored the Ming Dynasty's impressive efforts to rebuild China, their ambitious, though short-lived, maritime expeditions, and their shift towards a more inward-looking focus. But our sources also hint at a darker side to the Ming Dynasty, a trend toward autocratic rule and increased social tensions. What can you tell us about this aspect of the reign?
Well, despite their accomplishments, the Ming Dynasty, like many powerful empires, experienced a gradual shift towards more centralized control and autocratic rule. As the emperors consolidated their power, they sought to exert greater control over the state and society, often at the expense of individual freedoms and dissenting voices.
It's like power, once consolidated, has a tendency to expand and seek even greater control.
That's often the case. While the civil service examination system was designed to select officials based on merit, it could also be used to control the flow of ideas and ensure the loyalty of the bureaucracy. Those who expressed views deemed unacceptable or who challenged the emperor's authority could find themselves sidelined or even punished.
So while promoting meritocracy, they also sought to control the narrative and silence dissenting voices. Our sources also mention a secret police force. What role did they play in this shift towards greater control?
Well, the Ming emperors established a secret police force, known as the Guards with Brocade Uniforms, to monitor officials, gather intelligence, and suppress any signs of dissent or rebellion. These agents operated in the shadows, their presence creating an atmosphere of fear and suspicion.
The name itself, Guards with Brocade Uniforms, sounds intimidating. What kinds of powers did they have?
They had broad authority to arrest, interrogate, and punish individuals suspected of disloyalty or subversion. They could operate outside the normal legal channels, bypassing due process, and acting as a direct extension of the emperor's will. And this shift towards greater control wasn't just about consolidating power, it was also driven by growing social and economic anxieties.
What do you mean?
The Ming Dynasty, despite its early economic successes, faced growing challenges in the later centuries of its rule. A widening gap between the wealthy elite and the peasantry led to social unrest and sporadic rebellions. This guy, Li Zicheng.
Li Zicheng, a truly fascinating figure.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about a fast rise and fall. We're talking a peasant, a shepherd, leading a rebellion for, 15 years?
15 years, yes.
Yeah.
And in that time, he manages to topple an entire dynasty. The Ming Dynasty, no less.
How did Li Zicheng pull it off? How did he go from a nobody to an emperor so fast? And why was his reign so incredibly short?
Right, it's a story with a lot of twists and turns. It all starts in late Ming Dynasty China. The country was in a really bad way, especially in the north. Famines were ravaging the land. Smallpox was running rampant, and there's even some speculation about plague.
It sounds like a recipe for rebellion.
It was. And that's where Li Zicheng comes in.
So who was this guy? Where did he come from?
Well, he was born Li Hongji in 1606 in Shaanxi province. His family were poor farmers. He had an older brother who helped raise him. And he worked all sorts of jobs. So he was a farmer, he worked in a wine shop. He was even a blacksmith and a mail carrier for the government.
Wow. So he had seen a lot of different sides of life. He probably had a pretty good sense of what ordinary people were going through.
I'd say so. And then in 1630, something happened that really set him on a different path.
What was that?
The story goes, and there's a bit of folklore mixed in here, that he got in trouble with a local magistrate over unpaid loans.
Oof. Always a bad idea to get on a magistrate's bad side.
For sure. So this magistrate, he was apparently a real piece of work. Had Li Zicheng put on display in shackles and an iron collar.
Public humiliation, not great.
No, not at all. And then, to make matters worse, when one of the guards tried to give Li some shade and water, the magistrate hit the guard.
Seriously?
Yeah, and that seems to have been the breaking point. The local peasants, they'd had enough. They rose up, freed Li Zicheng, and basically declared him their leader.
Wow. But I mean, what could they really do? They were just peasants.
At first, they were armed with nothing more than wooden sticks. Can you imagine?
Talk about an underdog story.
It gets better. This small band of rebels, led by Li Zicheng, ambushed some government soldiers who were sent to arrest them. They seized the soldiers' weapons. Suddenly, they were a much more serious threat. And Li Zicheng, well, he was just getting started. Early on, he joined forces with another rebel leader, a guy named Gao Yingxiang, who was known as the Dashing King.
The Dashing King? That's a pretty cool nickname.
It is. And after Gao Yingxiang was killed, guess who took over?
Li Zicheng.
Li Zicheng. He became the new Dashing King, and he took command of the rebel army. Just 3 years later, his forces had grown to over 30,000 men.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
And he was winning victories. He focused on attacking and killing high-ranking Ming officials in key provinces.
That's a pretty bold strategy.
It was, and it worked. But it wasn't just about brute force. Li Zicheng was smart. He knew how to appeal to the people. He cultivated this image of himself as a sort of Robin Hood figure.
Taking from the rich, giving to the poor.
Exactly. He was seen as a champion of the poor, someone who was fighting against the corrupt Ming officials who were exploiting them.
And those slogans he used, they were pretty catchy too.
Oh yeah, things like dividing land equally and abolishing the grain taxes payment system. You can imagine how those would have resonated with people who were struggling to survive.
Definitely.
There was even a popular song that went around celebrating him. It talked about welcoming the Dashing King with open arms and good wine. He had real grassroots support.
So he was building a real movement.
In 1643, he captured Jiangyang, a strategically important city. And then he did something really interesting. He proclaimed himself King of Xinjiang.
King of Xinjiang? What does that even mean?
Xinjiang basically means new obedience. It was a clear sign that he was aiming for the top, that he wanted to replace the Ming Dynasty.
He wasn't messing around?
Nope. He established his capital in Qin and took the title Prince of the New Discipline. It was all about presenting himself as a legitimate ruler, someone who could bring order and a new system of governance.
So he was setting himself up as the next emperor.
Exactly. And then in April of 1644, he made his move. He marched on Beijing with a huge army, something like 300,000 men.
That's a serious force.
It was. And the city fell quickly. The gates were actually opened from the inside, which suggests there was either a lot of support for Li Zicheng within the city or that the Ming defenders had just given up.
I guess when your emperor commits suicide, it kind of takes the wind out of your sails.
Yeah, that didn't help. The Chongzhen emperor, the last Ming emperor, killed himself rather than be captured. It was the end of the dynasty. And with the capital in his hands, Li Zicheng declared himself emperor of the new Shang Dynasty.
So just like that, he'd achieved his goal.
He had. And it's important to remember that he claimed the mandate of heaven. Just like all Chinese emperors before him, his Han Chinese ethnicity gave him some legitimacy, especially compared to the Manchus, who were seen as foreign invaders.
Right, because the Manchus were getting pretty powerful in the north at this time.
Exactly. And Li Zicheng even got the support of some scholar officials, which was important for running the government.
So he was trying to do things by the book, in a way.
He was. But unfortunately for him, his reign didn't last long.
40 days, right?
40 days. It's almost hard to believe. And those 40 days were pretty chaotic. There was a lot of looting, executions of Ming officials, just a general sense of instability.
Not exactly a smooth transition of power.
No. And that alienated a lot of people who might have otherwise supported him.
So how did it all fall apart so quickly?
Well, there are a few reasons. Part of it was just the difficulty of consolidating power after such a rapid victory. But there's also this really interesting story, a bit of folklore, that might have played a big role.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the story?
Well, it involves a powerful Ming general named Wu Sangui. Wu Sangui was guarding the Shanhai Pass, which was a strategically vital point in the north.
Important for keeping the Manchus out, right?
Exactly. And the story goes that Li Zicheng took Wu Sangui's favorite concubine, a woman named Chen Yuan, and it said that he mistreated her.
Oh, no, not a good move.
No. And Wu Sangui was furious. So he did something pretty drastic. He allied with the Manchus. He opened the Shanhai Pass and let them into China.
Wow, that's a major betrayal.
It was. And it sealed Li Zicheng's fate. The Manchus, along with Wu Sangui's forces, defeated Li Zicheng's army at the Battle of Shanhai Pass in May of 1644.
And that was it for Li Zicheng's reign as emperor.
Pretty much. He was forced to flee Beijing. And as he left the Forbidden City, he ordered it to be set on fire.
Wow. Talk about going out with a bang.
Yeah. And as for what happened to Li Zicheng himself, that's a bit of a mystery.
A mystery? I thought we knew he was killed by villagers in 1645.
Well, that's the traditional account, and it's a popular story. The idea that this emperor, who had briefly held so much power, was brought down by ordinary people who were just fed up with the chaos his rebellion had caused, it's a pretty dramatic ending.
It is. But are there other theories about what happened to him?
There are. Some say he became a monk and lived out his days in obscurity. Others say he died in battle or from illness.
So we don't really know for sure.
We don't. But what we do know is that his story is an incredible example of a rapid rise and fall. He was a peasant who, in a matter of years, became emperor of China. And then, just as quickly, he lost it all.
It really makes you think, what if he hadn't alienated Wu Sangui? What if he had been able to consolidate his power more effectively? Could he have established a lasting dynasty?
It's hard to say, but it's a fascinating thought experiment, and it really highlights how fragile power can be.
And it all happened in the blink of an eye. A true, fast 5 minutes of history.
Absolutely. A truly fascinating story.
It's a common theme in history. Power, if not carefully balanced and checked, can become corrosive and ultimately self-destructive. And in the case of the Ming Dynasty, these tensions paved the way for the emergence of a new dynasty, the last imperial dynasty in Chinese history, the Qing Dynasty.
The Qing Dynasty. It sounds like we're approaching the modern era in Chinese history. What can you tell us about this final dynasty?
Well, the Qing Dynasty was founded by the Manchus, a people from Manchuria in northeast China, marking the second time in Chinese history that a foreign power ruled over the entire empire.
The second time. Wow.
Their rule, lasting from 1644 to 1912, was a time of both prosperity and turmoil, of expansion and decline, and ultimately of China's difficult transition to the modern world. You see, the Manchus, originally a semi-nomadic people with a strong martial tradition, had been gradually expanding their power in Manchuria for decades. They were formidable warriors, skilled in both traditional cavalry warfare and the use of gunpowder weapons, which they readily adopted and incorporated into their military tactics.
So they combined the traditional strengths of nomadic warfare with the new technologies of the era.
Precisely. And their conquest of China was a gradual process, involving strategic campaigns, negotiations, and opportunistic alliances, culminating in their capture of Beijing in 1644. And once they established their rule, they faced the challenge of governing a vast and diverse empire, one that had already experienced a period of foreign rule under the Mongols. They had to find a way to win over the Chinese population and legitimize their rule.
That sounds like a daunting task.
Yeah.
How did they approach it?
Well, the Qing emperors adopted a pragmatic approach that combined elements of their own Manchu culture with the administrative practices and traditions of Chinese governance. They retained many aspects of the Ming Dynasty's administrative structure, including the civil service examination system. But they also placed Manchus in key positions of power, especially in the military.
So keeping some of the familiar systems of governance while also inserting their own people into positions of influence. Did this approach work?
It was a delicate balancing act. But overall, the Qing Dynasty was successful in consolidating its rule and governing China for over 2 centuries. They oversaw a period of relative stability and prosperity, particularly during the reigns of emperors Kenji and Qianlong in the 17th and 18th centuries.
Okay, let's explore this period of Qing prosperity. What were some of their key achievements during this high Qing period? How did they shape China's economic, social, and cultural development?
Well, the Qing Dynasty during the reigns of Kangxi and Qianlong achieved remarkable stability and prosperity. They expanded the empire's territory, integrated new regions, and fostered economic growth through policies that encouraged agricultural production, reduced taxes, and promoted trade. It was a time of expansion, both territorial and economic.
It sounds like they were following a similar playbook to the Han and Tang dynasties. Strong leadership, smart policies, and a focus on both internal development and external expansion.
You're right to see those parallels. They successfully integrated new territories into the empire, including Xinjiang in the northwest and Tibet in the southwest, extending Chinese influence across Central Asia and the Himalayas. Imagine a vast empire stretching from the Pacific coast to the high mountains of Central Asia.
It's a vision of an expansive and powerful empire, reasserting its dominance in the region.
And they didn't neglect the cultural sphere. They patronized the arts, sponsored the compilation of encyclopedias or other scholarly works, supported Confucian scholarship, and encouraged innovation in painting, calligraphy, and ceramics. It was a time when Chinese culture flourished alongside their economic and military achievements.
So it's like they were creating a golden age, a time when China was not only powerful, but also a center of learning, art, and refinement. But as we've seen with previous dynasties, no golden age lasts forever. What eventually led to their downfall?
Well, the Qing Dynasty faced new and unprecedented threats in the 19th century that would ultimately lead to their demise.
It sounds ominous. What kind of challenges are we talking about?
They faced a new threat from the West, the rise of European imperialism.
Ah, yes, the 19th century, the age of European colonialism, when European powers were carving up the globe, expanding their empires, and seeking to dominate trade and resources. How did this new force impact China?
Well, Western powers, particularly Great Britain, were eager to expand their trade with China and tap into its vast markets. However, they also sought to impose their own terms of trade, often using military force to get their way. It was a clash between two very different worldviews. The traditional Confucian worldview of the Qing Dynasty, which saw China as the center of the world, and the expanding capitalist worldview of the West, driven by a thirst for profit and a belief in their own superiority.
It sounds like a recipe for conflict. And wasn't this the era of the Opium Wars?
You're right. The Opium Wars fought between China and Great Britain in the mid-19th century were a turning point in China's relationship with the West and a stark illustration of the shifting balance of power in the world.
What were the Opium Wars about? Sounds like a strange thing to fight over.
It's a complex story, but in essence, these wars were sparked by British attempts to force China to open its markets to opium, a highly addictive drug produced in British-controlled India.
So it wasn't just about trade. It was about a powerful nation using its military might to force another nation to accept a harmful substance for its own profit.
That's one way to look at it. And the consequences for China were devastating. The Qing Dynasty suffered humiliating defeats, forced to sign a series of unequal treaties that ceded territory, granted extraterritoriality to British citizens, and opened up more Chinese ports to foreign trade, all on terms dictated by the British.
Extraterritoriality. That sounds like a significant loss of sovereignty. What exactly does it mean?
Imagine this. British citizens living in China are subject to British law, not Chinese law. They could essentially operate with impunity beyond the reach of Chinese courts.
Wow. It's like creating a state within a state, a foreign enclave operating under its own rules.
Exactly. These unequal treaties created a system that favored Western powers and undermined Chinese sovereignty. They also exposed the technological and military gap that had developed between China and the West.
It must have been a shock to the Qing Dynasty, which had long seen itself as the dominant power in East Asia. How did they respond to these defeats? Did they try to reform and modernize to catch up with the West?
They did initiate some reforms, particularly in the military, but their response was often hesitant and piecemeal. They recognized the need for change, but they were also reluctant to embrace fundamental changes that might undermine their traditional values and power structures.
It's like they were caught between a rock and a hard place, recognizing the need to modernize, but also fearful of the consequences.
Precisely. And their hesitation proved costly. They faced further challenges from Western powers as other European nations followed Britain's lead, seeking to carve out their own spheres of influence in China.
So like the wolves are at the door, and the Qing Dynasty is struggling to find a way to fend them off.
And it wasn't just external threats. They also faced internal rebellions fueled by social and economic problems that the Qing government was unable to effectively address.
Our sources mention the Taiping Rebellion. What can you tell us about this uprising?
The Taiping Rebellion, which raged across China from 1850 to 1864, was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. It's estimated that tens of millions of people died as a result of the fighting and the ensuing chaos.
Those numbers are staggering. What caused this rebellion, and what were the rebels fighting for?
The rebellion was led by Hong Xiuquan, a charismatic figure who claimed to be the younger brother of Jesus Christ. He preached a message of social and economic equality, calling for the overthrow of the Qing Dynasty and the establishment of a utopian, heavenly kingdom of great peace. It was a radical movement that challenged the existing social order and sought to create a more just and equitable society.
It sounds like a blend of religious fervor and social revolution. What was the outcome?
The Taiping Rebellion, while ultimately crushed by the Qing government with the help of Western powers, left a lasting scar on China. It exposed the deep-seated social and economic problems that the Qing dynasty was struggling to address and further weakened their authority.
So it's like a double blow: external pressure from Western powers and internal rebellion weakening the Qing dynasty from both within and without. How much longer can they hold on?
Their grip on power was slipping. The Qing dynasty's final decades were marked by a series of crises that ultimately led to their collapse in 1912.
Okay, let's explore those final years.
Yeah.
What were the key events that sealed their fate?
One key event was the Sino-Japanese War of 1894-95, a conflict sparked by rivalry over influence in Korea. This war exposed the Qing dynasty's military weakness, despite some attempts at modernization, and resulted in a humiliating defeat for China.
It must have been a devastating blow to their pride, losing to Japan, a country they had long viewed as inferior.
It was a wake-up call for many within China, demonstrating the urgent need for more radical reforms to strengthen the country and catch up with the modernizing world. This led to a wave of reform efforts, known as the 100 Days Reform, spearheaded by Emperor Guangxu and supported by progressive intellectuals who recognized the need for sweeping changes in education, administration, and the military.
It sounds like a last-ditch effort to save the dynasty by embracing modernization and reform.
It was, but it faced strong opposition from conservative factions within the court, particularly Empress Dowager Cixi, a powerful figure who ultimately seized control and reversed many of the reforms.
It's like that constant tension we've seen throughout Chinese history, the forces of tradition resisting the forces of change.
Exactly. And this internal division, combined with ongoing economic problems, social unrest, and the growing influence of revolutionary groups who advocated for the overthrow of the Qing dynasty, created a highly volatile situation. It was like a powder keg waiting to explode.
And our sources mentioned the Boxer Rebellion. What role did that play in the Qing dynasty's final years?
The Boxer Rebellion, which erupted in 1899, was a violent uprising fueled by anti-foreign sentiment and a desperate desire to resist Western encroachment in China. The Boxers, a secret society, attacked Western missionaries, diplomats, and Chinese Christians, seeing them as symbols of foreign influence and a threat to Chinese traditions and values.
Did the rebellion succeed?
It didn't. The rebellion was brutally suppressed by an international force consisting of 8 nations, including Western powers and Japan. The Qing dynasty, having been forced to support the rebellion under pressure from conservative factions, was further weakened and humiliated. Their situation was increasingly precarious, and as their authority crumbled, revolutionary groups, inspired by ideas of republicanism and national rejuvenation, gained momentum.
So the stage is set for the final act, the end of the Qing dynasty and the end of imperial rule in China.
The Xinhai Revolution, which erupted in 1911, led by revolutionary groups like the Tang founded by Sun Yat-sen, proved to be the final blow. Sun Yat-sen, inspired by Western ideas of republicanism and democracy, advocated for the overthrow of the Qing dynasty and the establishment of a republic based on Chinese nationalism and modern principles of governance.
It's amazing how those ideas from the West, which had been a source of so much conflict for China, now inspired a movement to overthrow the old order and embrace a new vision for China.
It's a testament to the complex and often contradictory nature of history. The Qing dynasty, facing insurmountable challenges and unable to adapt to the changing realities of the world, abdicated in 1912, marking the end of over 2,000 years of imperial rule in China.
It's hard to imagine such a long and storied chapter coming to a close. It's like witnessing the end of an era.
It was a pivotal moment in Chinese history, a time of both loss and hope, of uncertainty and opportunity. The collapse of the Qing Dynasty opened the door for a new era in China, an era of republicanism, revolution, and ultimately the rise of a communist state. But that's a story for another time.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey, a whirlwind tour through the vast expanse of Chinese history, from its ancient origins to the fall of the last imperial dynasty. As we wrap up this exploration of Chinese history, what are some key takeaways? What insights can we glean from this journey through time?
One key takeaway is the cyclical nature of Chinese history. We've seen this pattern repeatedly. A dynasty rises to power, consolidates its rule, achieves a period of stability and prosperity, and then eventually faces internal and external challenges that lead to its decline and replacement by a new dynasty. It's a reminder that even the most powerful empires are not immune to the forces of change, and that power, if not carefully managed and balanced, can be fleeting.
Another key takeaway for me is the remarkable resilience and adaptability of Chinese civilization. Despite facing countless challenges, invasions, rebellions, natural disasters, and even periods of foreign rule, it has endured, adapting to changing circumstances while preserving its core values and traditions.
It's a testament to the strength and ingenuity of the Chinese people, their ability to navigate through tumultuous times, to rebuild, to innovate, and to find new paths forward.
It's like a bamboo forest. It bends with the wind but doesn't break. It's flexible, strong, and deeply rooted in the earth.
I love that analogy. It perfectly captures the enduring spirit of Chinese civilization.
And speaking of enduring legacies, we've also seen how Confucianism has shaped Chinese thought, society, and governance for over 2,000 years. While Confucianism has been reinterpreted and adapted throughout history, its core values, education, meritocracy, social harmony, and respect for authority, have continued to exert a profound influence.
It's a philosophy that emphasizes the importance of family, community, and the pursuit of knowledge and self-cultivation. And finally, we've witnessed China's complex and multifaceted engagement with the world, from its early interactions with nomadic cultures and trade along the Silk Road to its encounters with Western powers in the modern era.
It's a reminder that China hasn't existed in isolation. It's always been part of a larger global context, interacting with other cultures, exchanging ideas, and influencing the course of world history.
Exactly.
And as we encourage our listeners to continue their own explorations of Chinese history, perhaps by diving deeper into the story of a specific dynasty or the life of a notable figure, I want to emphasize that this journey is full of surprises. It's full of unexpected twists, remarkable innovations, enduring legacies, and fascinating characters that will challenge your assumptions and expand your understanding of the world. This has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Chinese civilization.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you.
Until next time, keep exploring.